What's up, guys? This is Jay Griff. Welcome back to the Dark Souls 2 blog of pain. All right, so today's episode is called Jolly Cooperation, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. All right, the first thing that I want to talk about is a very critical difference between Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2. And in fact, a very critical difference between that sets Dark Souls 2 apart from a lot of other games is that in Dark Souls 1, whenever you would rest at a bonfire, all the enemies in the area would respawn. So going back to a bonfire was always sort of a tactical decision. You would get all of your spells, miracles, your Estus flasks, all that stuff would come back. You'd be able to repair your equipment, if you had the right items, and you'd get a full heal. But in exchange, all of the enemies in every area would respawn. So you had to be like, okay, if I have to backtrack, am I going to be able to make it back to where I was? Or you can plow forward through a group of enemies and find a bonfire and you can rest there, but now you need to be aware that all the enemies you just killed behind you, they're there. So if you need to get back out of the area you're in, you got to fight through them again. Um, in Dark Souls 2, it's very much very similar. You get a full heal, all your miracles, your spells, and your Estus flasks. Those all come back, but and enemies do respawn, but they only respawn to a certain point. It turns out that there's a threshold that appears to be different for every enemy, or at least there's multiple standards floating around there, that after you've killed them a certain number of times, they will stop respawning. And that's very, very different. I noticed it for the first time when I was going through the area that I thought looked a lot like Anor Londo. Um, there was a giant with a shield very close to the bonfire, and then there was a giant beyond him who had a big hammer. And I remember killing him the first time, getting killed by the next giant that was after him, uh, being reborn at the bonfire, fighting the shield giant again, and then going up the stairs, and the guy with the hammer wasn't there. And that was when I realized, oh, these guys aren't always going to respawn. And it seems like the maximum is about 15 times. You kill an enemy 15 times, they stop respawning, which is interesting because that means if you're continuously getting your ass handed to you by an area, you can keep getting killed and making it back to where your bloodstain is, getting your souls back, maybe killing another enemy and dying again. Eventually, the enemies that you're killing will stop respawning, and you will be able to just go through the area to get right to where you died. And that's kind of interesting. It's definitely more accessible. Um, but it was not lost upon me that this immediately caused a problem because that means you couldn't exactly farm an area for souls anymore. You couldn't just run back through it killing enemies to get their souls because eventually there won't be any enemies in the zone at all. And I was like, well, that's interesting. That could cause a problem. If I need a ton of souls and can't go through the areas where I can survive. And then when I started screwing around with my summon sign, I got the item that allowed me to place a summon sign on the ground to let other players summon me to their world as a phantom. And that's when I realized I've been doing the whole soul farming thing completely wrong. Because the way to do it is to be summoned into somebody else's world in jolly cooperation. I don't know how it worked in Dark Souls 1 because I could never get it to work. I had it on the PC, Games for Windows Live, and in fact can't work anymore because Games for Windows Live has been taken down. So I've never experienced this before. But you get summoned as a phantom, someone else's world. You don't have to be in human form. You have to be in human form if you want to summon a phantom to your world. But to be summoned to someone else's, you don't have to be in human form. You can be undead and hollowed and cursed and all of that shit. And they can call you. And you have a limited amount of time. It's not displayed or anything. It's a timer that's hidden from you. And the more enemies you kill, the faster you will leave. But you get approximately one half of the souls from everything that dies. The player, and I know this because I've had two phantoms with me, killing enemies, the player continues to get 100% of the souls in his host world, and an extra 50% go to the phantoms that are there. So if there's two phantoms, they will each, and an enemy's worth 200 souls. The host gets 200 souls, then both of the phantoms get 100 souls, and that's a big deal for bosses because they're worth a ton of souls. All the bosses that I fought so far are worth 10,000 each. So every time I get summoned to help a player kill a boss, and there's no limit to how many times I can do that, I get 5,000 souls, and that's a ton. So and that's a huge incentive now for players to be putting their soul sign down outside boss rooms, near bonfires, through hallways where shit's gonna go bad. It's a huge incentive for those players to put that summon sign there and participate in the co-op that's going on out there. You can't talk to each other. There's no voice chat or nothing, and if there is, I don't have it enabled. Actually, the default is that it's disabled. You may be able to talk to each other if you're both in the same covenant. I don't know. I haven't tested that yet. But you can still kind of communicate through the gestures in the game. It's very common that when you get summoned in, you bow to the person that was there, or they'll bow. Or my big thing is the getting pumped up animation, and then you go through the area, and whenever we're in front of the boss rooms, I do the battle cry. Just in case the player doesn't know what's about to happen, I do the battle cry to be like, "Yo, get hype! Shit's about to get real up in here." And then we go in there, we fight the boss, and I haven't survived every time because these bosses are still really powerful. But when you get 3 people, in there duking it out, you've got this. You're gonna take him down. And it's if you survive to kill a boss, it says your duty was fulfilled. You get what's called a token of fidelity, and you're sent back to your world. Or if the timer runs out, it also says duty fulfilled. You get a token of fidelity. You're sent back to your world. If you die, you just go back to your world. If you die as a phantom, you don't lose any of the souls you accumulated or any of the souls you had previously. So there's no penalty for dying. You don't lose your humanity if you were summoned in human form, and you can even pick up items while you're in the other world. It's not common, and it's items that the player, the host, they can't see them, so they're only for you. That's awesome. Also, you reappear exactly where you were. So if you drop a summon sign and then run off to go do whatever, you'll get a notice that you're being summoned, and you'll appear in their world. But then as soon as that's over, you don't reappear where your summon sign was. You reappear exactly where you were. The enemies are exactly where they were, even if they were about to hit you, which happened to me, and that was weird. Get summoned back in and immediately start rolling to try to not die. That was pretty funny. But see, yeah, co-op. Oh my god, it is so much fun. It is so fucking awesome. I think the limitation is you can only be summoned by someone who is plus or minus 10 of your level. So like if you're level 20, you can be summoned by guys up to level 30 or down to level 10. So you can help someone who's way weaker or be summoned by someone who's actually way stronger than you, but a second sword always helps. The bosses. Let's talk about these bosses for a minute, because the first boss, I was a little harsh on him for his bad collision detection. Not the case with the 3 that I have taken down now. Big change from Dark Souls. Dark Souls had 1 boss per area. That was it, and the boss being dead or alive changed things within that area. It changed enemy pathing. It changed whether or not you could acquire humanity from killing a bunch of enemies. It changed some of the ways they acted. There's at least 2 bosses in the 2 areas I've discovered now. So it's hard to say which is the dominant boss, if there is one. But my old thinking of like, okay, I've killed the boss in this area, go to another area, that didn't work out because I had to go back and then go back to the other one again to find the bosses that I had accidentally skipped. And I only discovered these bosses because I was summoned to someone else's world, and I followed him down the rabbit hole, and I was like, where the hell is this guy going? The boss is in the complete other direction. Oh, there's a boss up here too. Really? That's interesting. So I got, that was cool. The mini boss that beat my ass a couple episodes back, you might remember, he came back as a full boss, so I can assume you get that one chance to kill him and you probably get something really cool if you take him down before he's a real boss, and probably his boss fight doesn't happen after that. I don't know, but that's really cool. And this is leading. I defeated him. He's called the Pursuer, and I also defeated a boss in the area I described, which had all the pitfalls and the giants. He was called the Dragon Rider, and I thought that was really interesting. And I'm going to talk about that on my next episode of the Dark Souls blog because I'm trying to get the damn length of these down. But so next episode of Dark Souls blog, I'm going to talk about that area and my current theory for what's going on in this world. My current theory on the plot, because even as much as the NPCs are saying, there's a ton of questions that I'm generating that they're just not talking about. So I'm going to talk about that next time. Hey guys, thanks for listening.